In this video, I'm going to take you through the steps for crocheting this totally unique Heartstrings Granny Square. As you can see, the square is made up of a series of small little hearts and little circles. So it's sort of like 9 little mini projects rolled into one. If you were to use traditional methods, this would be a very tedious square to make. Fortunately, I can show you a better way. Using my breakaway crochet techniques, it's possible to crochet these hearts and circles one after the other without breaking the yarn between each one. Better still, you can join them together as you go. The secret for working these little motifs continuously is knowing how to make floating rings, which is part of my breakaway crochet method. I will briefly show you how to make the floating rings here, but if you would like the full story on my breakaway method, then I have other videos for you to check out. You can find links for those in the description. I've also provided a link to download the free written version of this pattern, which outlines the steps I'm going to show you here. For now, I'm just going to focus on how to make just one square. But I do have more than one idea on how to continuously join the squares together to make bigger projects. So if you master this single square, then you will be in good stead for fancier projects I have in mind. Please subscribe to get notifications of future videos. And before we start, I would just like to briefly go over how to navigate how we're going to go through this square. We're actually going to start with this heart in this position here, and this diagram is going to help us keep track of what's going on. So on the diagram, we will be starting here and working this first portion of this first heart. So in essence, we're going to work this blue section here. Then I'll tell you what to do next. So let's start the first stitch, which is a floating treble stitch. To do a floating treble, we do yarn over twice. That sets up the yarn overs we need for the actual treble stitch. And now let's make the floating ring. To do that, do the yarn over, pinch the yarn close to the hook, to another yarn over, pinch that along with that first loop. So we've got 2 pinched loops. Do a yarn over and draw through what we're hanging on to there in the pinched loops. Once we've done that, that is our floating ring made. This floating ring replaces what normally would have been a chain 4 slip stitch that could have gone in the center of this little heart motif. So instead we're going to work all the stitches for this heart into this floating ring. So now let's finish the treble part of the stitch. And again, we have all our stitches or yarn overs ready to finish off the treble. So it's just a matter of yarn over, pull through 2 loops 3 times. And that is our floating treble made. To continue, work 2 more trebles into the floating ring. And this is going to, again, start kind of that little bump of that first heart. So that's what we look like so far. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to abandon this heart for the moment and jump to the next little circle. This has been labeled as the first connecting circle in your pattern, and it is basically a small motif made up of 8 single crochets. So to make that little circle there, first connecting circle, we start with a floating single crochet. In this case, we go straight to the floating ring, which again is yarn over, pinch, yarn over, pinch, yarn over, go through the 2 pinched loops. So there's our floating ring. See how we have 2 loops on here for the single crochet? We just finish that off with the yarn over, pull through 2, and that is our floating single crochet. So from now on, all the stitches in this little circle will go into this floating ring. We've got 7 more single crochets to do. And we need to close this little circle by doing a slip stitch between the little circle and the heart we've started. So just dip under there, grab the yarn, and do a slip stitch, and that closes up our little circle there. From here, we're going to jump from our circle we've just made back to our heart, and we're going to do this bottom section of the heart along here. So continue with another treble. Again, we're shifting back to the floating ring we were using for the heart. Just go in there and do another treble. And now in that same floating ring, do 3 double crochets. So that's basically half of the heart and our first connecting little circle made. And we're going to abandon this heart one more time. We're jumping from here to making the center heart, or the center little circle here. All right, so we're going to work that all way around, just like we did this one. Basically, it consists of 8 single crochets. So again, start with a floating single crochet. And in that latest floating ring, do 7 more single crochets. And again, we need to close that little circle off, and again, we crochet with a slip stitch between these 2 little motifs. Now we're going to continue on, again, jumping back from this little circle we just made back to this first heart, and we're going to finish off the other bottom half of the heart. We do that by starting with a treble into that heart floating ring, 3 double crochets, and 1 more treble before we leave this heart for the time being. So let's continue on around our little square. We're going to jump from here to the next little connecting circle, and we're only going to work 1/4 of the way around, which means that's only 2 single crochets, 1 being the floating single crochet plus 1 more single crochet. So again, we start with that floating single crochet, and this time we're only going to put 1 more single crochet in there again, because we're only working 1/4 of the way around. So it's time to continue on to the second heart, and we're only going to work this portion of this heart. So in other words, here's where we are now. We're going to jump over here, work this side, and the important thing is to join that into our little central wheel, and then work up the other side of this heart. So to start the second heart, we do another floating treble. Again, that was 2 yarn arounds, a floating ring, yarn around and through 2 loops 3 times, and that started the second heart. We continue that bottom part of the heart with 3 double crochets, And now we pause here because we've gotten to the kind of the tip of the heart. So we need to join that to our center little wheel here. Really, now that I'm just kind of showing you, it's easy just to follow back along until you get to that next wheel, or little circle, I mean. We skip one stitch in the circle and we're going to slip stitch into this one, that second one there. I think in the instructions I say to skip these 10 stitches and slip stitch into that stitch there of the little center circle. And again, my way of doing a slip stitch on a connection like this is to take the hook through the stitch and shove everything over to the left, grab the yarn and pull through. And once you master that technique, that helps you to kind of motor along fairly quickly, and it looks pretty neat as well. Okay, so let's continue with the second heart with a treble, three double crochets, and another treble. And that's where we're going to leave this heart, the second heart, and continue to the next section of the little square. So I'm going to kind of abbreviate things a little bit here now. This is where we've left off. We need to do the quarter way round, this little circle here, just like we did before. And we're going to work the bottom half of the next heart, just like we did here, remembering to join that to the center little circle, which brings us here, and then work another little section of the next connecting circle here. And then I'll pause and show you this little heart here is going to be slightly different. So again, just pretty much do what we've done before until you get to this point. And that's where I'll meet you in just a sec. So here's how things should look so far. It's time now to work the bottom part of our fourth heart, which is, of course, this little section here. And I'm going to go over that because it is slightly different from the other ones. But however, we do start, as usual, with a floating treble, 3 double crochets, and remember we follow our way down until we get to the center circle, and you can see how we've got that spare stitch there. We skip the first stitch of the circle and go into the second one to do our slip stitch. Again, we have a treble stitch and 3 double crochets, but we're going to start or stop, I'm sorry, before we do the next treble, because we've got to hook in this heart to the first connecting circle. So that's going to close up our little square. So to do that, we're going to skip all the stitches here until we get to that first connecting circle. And on that first connecting circle, again, we're going to skip the first stitch and slip stitch into the second one. And that connects us up. And now we're going to continue on, finishing off the tops of all our little hearts. So that means we're going to switch gears, start coming back around this way by doing the 2 bumps of this heart here. And there's no real mystery here. It's really for this fourth heart here only. We do 4 trebles to do that sort of right hand bump. of the heart. I continue with a double crochet, chain, and a slip stitch. You can see that middle there. So that's made that kind of a right hand bump. Let's do the left hand bump now. Another chain, double crochet, and on this side we just need 3 treble stitches. So that's pretty much that heart finished. Now you see how we have that gap here. We close that up by slip stitching between the heart and that next partially made connecting circle. So that's closed the heart up. So really it's just a matter of continuing around. We're going to work the rest of our connecting circle, our next heart, and so on until we get back to the first heart. So for that next little circle, we just continue on with 6 single crochets because we've already done the first 2. Again, we need to close that little circle with a slip stitch in between. Make the right hand bump of the next heart. This time we only need 3 trebles to do that. Again, if you forget exactly how many stitches, please download the written pattern. It's all set out in there. So that was the 3 trebles, double crochet, chain 1, slip stitch, and the left bump starts with another chain, double crochet, and 3 trebles. Close that heart again with a slip stitch between it and the next little circle. So that's pretty much how we're going. 6 more single crochets in here with the right bump and left bump. Finish off this little circle, and I'll meet you here on that very first heart. So just to catch you up, here are all the sections we've worked. We've just finished this little circle here. Just need to do that right hand bump here of this last heart, and we're finished. See, here's how our square looks in real life. Again, we just have that right hand bump to finish. Again, start with your 3 trebles, double crochet, chain 1, slip stitch, and the right hand bump now, remember we kind of started that already, so we only need to do the first couple of stitches of that, which would be chain 1, double crochet, and that's it. Slip stitch into the first stitch, and there we have it. Our little square is done. So again, I haven't gone through joining in this video, but I do have, again, some ideas on how to do that. I'll do that in future videos. Make sure you subscribe, and you can learn how to join as many squares as you want, again, without breaking yarn between each square. Thanks for watching, and see you again soon.